What would you like to see change in your life? And what is the biggest obstacle that you're facing now? I run 2 programs called Inner Knowing and Good Life Designed for serious individuals who are ready to take the next step in their personal and professional lives. I will personally be coaching a small group of individuals on tools and frameworks for creating an intuitive practice and for creating self-mastery in their life. As someone who's helped countless entrepreneurs open doors of possibility that they never thought existed, I've seen these strategies transform people's lives. The best part is that you'll 10x your output, unlock your creative genius. I'll work with you weekly to overcome your limiting beliefs. I'll teach you how to create clarity, processes, develop your intuition, and set a new framework on how to live your best life. And you'll get access to guided meditations that I have personally created that are not available anywhere else. We'll create a new self-concept that you can practice moving forward. This method is so effective that even if you don't have a lot of time or if you think you're not ready for a change, these frameworks and methodologies will still work for you. You can check out the link in the show notes to join the waiting list, and you can also check out what some of the previous clients had to say about our time together. It's first come, first serve, and I hope to see you there. Hi, my name is Yasmin Tarehi, and this is Gateways to Awakening, where we host one-on-one conversations with leading experts in wellness, well-being, and spirituality. On today's episode, I speak with Dr. Judith Orloff. She's the New York Times best-selling author of The Empath's Survival Guide, Life Strategies for Sensitive People. Her latest books, Affirmations for Empaths and Thriving as an Empath, offers daily self-care tools for sensitive people. Dr. Orloff is a psychiatrist, an empath, and is on the UCLA Psychiatric Clinical Faculty. She synthesizes the pearls of traditional medicine with cutting-edge knowledge of intuition, energy, and spirituality. She also specializes in treating highly sensitive, empathetic people in her private practice. She's been featured on the Today Show, CNN, Oprah Magazine, the New York Times, and she also has a very popular TEDx talk. She's got other books, but we will dive into all that in the show. So I'm really excited to welcome Dr. Judith Orloff to the show. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you, Judith. So to kick it off, can you tell us what exactly is an empath?
Well, I'm a psychiatrist in Los Angeles. I'm also an empath. So I combine my traditional medical skills with my empathic abilities to help treat patients and get added insights into how to help people. And an empath is somebody who is sensitive and open and connected to life and loves nature. But they tend to get overwhelmed by noise, smells, and excessive talking. And they tend to take on and absorb the emotions and energy of other people into their own bodies without knowing it. And without self-care techniques, they can suffer a lot from low energy and just being on overload all the time. And so I view being an empath as a gift. And it is a gift in everyone I work with and everyone I've ever met. However, in order to maximize that gift, you have to really learn how to set limits and boundaries and center yourself and meditate and connect with positive people. There are all kinds of techniques I talk about in the Empath Survival Guide. But it's important that we learn skills so you can maximize your gift and be of service to this world, to yourself, first of all, to others, and, this world that we're in, which is so desperately in need of what you have, your empathy. As I look at empathy as the medicine the world needs.
This resonates so deeply for me because I definitely feel that I am an empath. When I heard about your work, I was really just moved by it because when you have language that explains what you're experiencing, it makes it more, it makes it it makes it, for at least for me, I felt like really understood, like why am I picking up so many people's emotions in a room? And why do I feel so sensitive when, even people who are just looking at me, I can sort of sense when, they're experiencing some level of discomfort and what they're experiencing. So I want to talk about the hypersensitive mirror neurons, because that piece really was fascinating for me. What are some of the ways an empath experiences their world with the hypersensitive mirror neurons? Can you speak about that?
Oh, yes. The mirror neurons are amazing neurons, a neuron system in the brain, which helps to increase our compassion. They're the compassion neurons. And so it's been shown that when, let's say you have a couple who love each other, when they're both given CT scans and one member of the couple gets hurt and the other one is observing it, they also have their mirror neurons fire up because they feel the pain that the loved one is feeling. So they showed that now on CT scans. And what this means is that empaths who are so empathic and they tune into way too many people, as far as I'm concerned, because it's not healthy to tune into everyone you see, but empaths have an instinct to do that. And that fires up your mirror neuron systems. So your compassion neurons are going on overload because you have so much compassion. You just drive and you go in your car, drive past the homeless people and the all the suffering people you see on the streets. You can, if you're an empath and you're open to absorbing all that, you'll be a wreck by the time you get to your destination. And so it's really important to make the most of your capacities to sense, but also set limits with it and kind of mind your own business a little bit more and stay in your own lane. As empaths need to really conserve their energy. And what you can do when you see somebody suffering is send them some heart energy, send them some love. That's really helpful. And it will build you up and it will send something useful to them. You taking on their energy isn't going to help you and it's not going to help them. So you want to understand that your compassion neurons are really functioning well, but they tend to go on overdrive. And that's part of the science of being an empath, is realizing that you have the system of mirror neurons and knowing that you can regulate it. It's not just something that acts on its own. It responds to your choices and actions.
Hmm. And Judith, are we born with these hypersensitive mirror neurons, or do you believe that it's kind of an adaptive trait that we create, from childhood or in our younger years? Like, how do people become hypersensitive?
Yeah, some people are born empaths and some people develop it in their life. And sometimes sometimes, I want to underline that, not always, trauma can be related to being an empath because if you're a sensitive person and you're brought up in a really neglectful or narcissistic or alcoholic abusive environment, that can wear down the natural defenses that you have and cause you to be more sensitive and to feel there's no membrane between you and the world. So empaths can develop as a result of trauma and not getting the kinds of nurturing that we all deserve that most of us don't get. Where if you have, let's say, really beautiful, wonderful parents who know how to nurture, they give all that positive energy off to you so you don't have to work overtime protecting yourself. And empaths become hypervigilant often because their environment can seem so threatening. You don't know who you're going to run into. If somebody's going to ask something more of you than you can give, but you can't say no. So, whatever the situation is, or you're being faced with a trauma that you have to look at as you're walking down the street, empaths need to know how to center themselves, send out heart energy, and keep moving on. So, some empaths are born, some empaths are made, And what's interesting that I've observed with a lot of my patients and workshop participants is that since the pandemic and everything we've all been through, even non empaths are becoming empaths because their defenses are getting stripped away from all the stress and uncertainty and weirdness and not knowing how to handle it and social isolation. All of that is making certain people more sensitive and more open to their feelings.
Hmm. Wow, fascinating. And what about the specific challenges for empaths per gender?
Yes, that's a great question. Both men and women have a hard time. Our society is not as yet as supportive as I would like to have them nurture empathic children. But as men are growing up, they have incredible challenges. I have an empath support group on Facebook, and maybe 95% of the comments are women and 5% are men. And occasionally the women say, "Are there any men out there?" And then they all come out. They're there and they say they're listening to the comments and learning, but they're afraid to speak up. They were called babies, crybabies as children. They wanted to walk in the woods. The men, they didn't want to play football. They wanted to write poetry. They didn't want to, go on the video games. They didn't like that. They don't like noise. And so men are called sissies, all kinds of horrible things. They're shamed for their sensitivities, as are girls. But girls are more expected to have emotions, and men aren't even given that. So men have a really hard time with their sensitivities and the support. And so as adults, they can get the support. And that's what I want to offer them. And every empath out there, I want to support you in awakening to your abilities, seeing them as a gift, and learning how to practice self-care so you don't absorb all the extraneous energies of the world, which are not healthy for you to absorb. So men have a really hard time. Women, are often told, as I was as a child growing up, get a thicker skin. You're not strong enough. You need to steel up. All of those things that many of us hear. And as a 8-year-old, I was like, what? What are they talking about? Steel up. I didn't have any idea. It was just not me. It was just asking me to be a not me so I became ashamed of my abilities and just didn't express them to anyone. I got really quiet, and that's not good either.
Right, right. What about, some of the common challenges that empaths experience? You alluded to many. I'm curious if maybe you could ground us in like a case study or a couple examples that you've seen, the common themes that you've seen over the years with empaths. Like, do they end up in certain types of relationships or jobs? Like, what sort of is the archetype of an empath?
Oh, there's a chapter in the Empath Survival Guide on empaths and work, and I go through all the jobs that are empath friendly versus those that empaths don't usually do well in. And so it's important if you're an empath um, to find the kind of work that you feel comfortable with. An empath often, I have a patient who was in the office before the pandemic and always hated going into an office. She's a lawyer. She hated it, hated office politics, hated the energy, had a hard time, with absorbing her colleagues' energy. And since the pandemic, she's been given the opportunity to work at home, which is much preferable for her. 'Cause she has more control over who's around her, and she goes into the office occasionally, but she does most of her work from home now, and many empaths prefer that. They prefer being their own boss. They prefer not having to interact with lots of people every day. And they can pick and choose. Like she can pick and choose going to meetings. She can have a meeting, in a restaurant if she wants. And so she can pick and choose, but then it allows her the alone time that she needs to replenish herself between clients. And that's so important for empaths, that you don't ever schedule anything back to back if you can help it.
Mm. Oh, interesting. I did not know that. So if empaths technically should have like a little bit of control and agency over their own work schedules because of the sensitivities that they have, interacting with so many different types of people. I definitely feel that. I've been working from home for a long time. So, yeah, productivity goes through the roof usually when we have that spaciousness from so many
It's true, but
people.
I want to say that, in the book, I also talk about different kinds of empaths. And most empaths are introverts, but I want to say there are some extroverts, and they like socializing and being around a lot of people and may prefer to be in an office. And then there are ambiverts, who are a combination of
Mm,
introvert and extrovert. So they can go either way, depending on where they're at. And so, what I'm saying for myself, I'm an introvert. And so I prefer working at home alone and all that, as do a lot of introverts. But if you're listening and you say, I'm a little bit more extroverted than that. I like to be around people. It gives me energy. I like that. And then so you have to honor that in yourself as well. You might want to go into an office, or you might want to create a life with more social interactions in it. So it just depends what you need. But if you're an empath, no matter who you are, you need to take that alone time to replenish yourself and decompress after the social interactions.
mm,
So as opposed to non-empaths who may not need that as much. I mean, everybody needs to rest and not overdo, but empaths need it for their life. When they don't get it, they go on sensory overload, and it's painful.
yeah, absolutely. I love that you have also acknowledged that you could be extroverted and an empath, or ambivert and an empath, because I think sometimes people just assume that if you're an empath, you might skew towards being more introverted only. So I, appreciate that nuance. Why are empaths so misunderstood, Judith?
I think they're so misunderstood because we've never had the prototype for them. And in my psychiatric training, I never learned about empathy or empaths. I mean, I learned from my mother. My mother was a family practitioner, and she used to take me on house calls with her to her patients, like in Bel Air and Beverly Hills. And it was quite exciting for me as a little girl. My mother was a total extrovert. And she would take me with her, and she would talk to her patients, and she would have empathy for her patients, and she would listen forever with her stethoscope to a patient's heart. And I would watch her. I just sit quietly in a chair and watch my mother in action. And I watched what her patients would ask her, and how they would smile at her, and how close they were, really. And it was just a beautiful role modeling for me. But yeah, I never got that in my training so much at USC and UCLA. I had a biological training at UCLA. I learned how to give out medications and help people in that way, and also do some psychotherapy. But I was never told about empaths. And I hadn't fully appreciated what was going on in me. It took me a while to put all the pieces together so that I could have the verbiage to communicate it to other people. Because this, except for on Star Trek, I think in the late 80s, where there was an empath character, Deanna Troi, Star Trek New Generation, beautiful character. I loved her. I don't know anyone who ever used that word, but I've been using it since 1997 in my first book, Second Sight. And so finally, just a few years ago, I wrote a whole book on it. But in all my books, I've written about empaths. So it's been a very important missing piece in traditional medicine. And I think now more and more people are being open to empaths, and patients are getting more assertive about their needs. I mean, just listening to your body is an essential skill for empaths. and everybody. And if you're working with a healthcare practitioner, you have to say things like, this doesn't feel good in my body, taking this pill. What can we do about it? You have to really begin to assert yourself so you can be in sync with treatments and people and choices you make in your life. They all have to feel good to your body, by the way.
Yeah, I love that. And what's the link between empaths and intuition?
There's a type of empath called an intuitive empath. An intuitive empath is somebody who has all the empathic qualities. By the way, I have a 20-question self-assessment test in the front of the Empath Survival Guide if you want to determine if you're an empath. But one of the types is an intuitive empath, where these people are very in touch with their intuition. They get a sense of how to read people. They get a sense of, how to tune in and get information, about life, or tuning into even nature, because that's what we know how to do. We know how to tune into nature. And when we go for a walk, you can feel the trees. Some of my non-empath friends are going, what? They you know, they don't do that, but I do. As an empath, I can feel the life force in the tree. I connect to the tree as if it were my companion. So, and just because you're with somebody who's not an empath, it's one is not better than another. It's just different. And so you don't want to put down people who are not empaths. It's not about that. You just want to honor the diversity of the human being and see how we're all different. But being an empath, because it hasn't been talked about enough in medicine and in healthcare and everywhere, I feel great, to be a voice for it, because it's so worthy to come into this aspect of yourself, no matter how old you are, no matter how much you've suffered and what you've been through. You can awaken as an empath today. You could begin now. I mean, I actually had a patient come in to see me who was in her early 90s, and she just awakened to the fact that she was an empath. And she's so grateful. It's never too late to find out and make shifts in yourself. Really,
Mm.
never. And it's never too early. You can have a baby, who you can support their sensitivities so that their life can be a little bit easier than those of us who didn't have any support for them.
Yeah, I love that so much. Yeah, it's nice to know and identify as an empath, because then you know how to work with it. And I want to talk about how empaths protect themselves in love relationships. How does that work?
Yeah, that's something I'm really interested in. That's been a big issue in my life path is I had used to have a yearning for a love relationship, but then I'd get into a relationship and I'd feel overwhelmed and bolt. So, that was my pattern. And I've been with my current partner for almost 10 years now, which is a record. I've never stayed with anyone that long because I haven't been able to tolerate it, as there's so many issues that come up in relationship, and you have to have a partner that you can dialogue with. Otherwise, it's really hard to be in a relationship, as I get overwhelmed. And when I'm overwhelmed, I have to, make the alone time for myself. And I have to meditate. I have to go in my bath. I have to go out, walk by the ocean. I have to do something by myself. So I'm used to replenishing by myself. I am not used to replenishing with another person. Most of my life, it was just me and the ocean, or me and the trees, or with select friends who got it, who I can walk with. Um, but being in a relationship, it requires that you are able to express yourself and you don't think you're asking too much of the other person to understand you. You see, so it's important. If you're with another empath, it's one thing. If you're with a non-empath, it's another thing. As my partner is a non-empath, which I so appreciate, because I couldn't bear it if there were two of us. It would be too overstimulating for me. I'm a lot to handle. In terms of, in a good way, in terms of there's so much going on in my body all the time and my energy field and my creativity and it's just very dynamic being me and my body. And he doesn't experience things that way. He's more, I'm focused on what I'm doing now. That's all I'm doing. Like we were driving in a car and I look at him and I said, "What are you feeling?" And he looked at me and goes, "I'm not feeling anything. I'm driving." Oh, great. I'm thrilled. He's like that because, it gives me a chance to be me and he grounds me. He really does. Just the way he is grounds me, and that's important. If you're an empath who wants to be in a relationship, you have to decide or feel into who feels the best to be in a relationship with. Do you want another empath? There are advantages to that I talk about in the book. You don't have to reinvent the wheel every time you go through something because you both understand each other. You know what you're experiencing, but you both also can get really intense. And so when you're both on overload, you have to separate. You can't work it out amongst the two of you. You must go your own ways and work it out and then come back calmer. So, there are different skills I talk about in the book with different types of people. But I know people who prefer being with empath partners. It's just easier, in a lot of ways. It isn't for me, but it is for a lot of people. So it depends on you as an individual. If you're listening, what's good for you. Um, and it's an ongoing meditation. Is something that my soul really wanted. It's something my soul really wanted to do what I'm doing now with Corey. Um, but it's taken me, I don't know, 7 years to get to a comfort level, maybe that long. Um, because I was always used to being alone, and being single and having control over my life and writing my books and doing book tours and just being with my friends and going to the gym. I was just like this individual functioning in the world, but I was always lonely and I longed to have this and I didn't get it until, later in life. But I'm just so grateful I have the chance to do it.
Hmm.
Because my soul needed it. But I want to say it's not for everyone. Relationships are a lot of work. You
Yeah.
know, they're not too much work where it becomes drudgery, but they do require you to be in touch with yourself and honor your own empathic needs and be able to communicate that with a partner and to be able to tolerate frustration and uncertainty. It's a whole mixture of spiritual challenges that occur when you're in an ongoing relationship that's committed and respectful and loving.
Right, right, right. Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That was, definitely can reflect on that because the intensity of energy, I think I feel the same way, and a lot of my friends have said that as well. Just there's such an intensity of energy and creativity and sensitivities. And so I do find that I experience so much sensory inputs. Like I'm getting so many downloads of information all the
Yeah.
time. And it's really hard to explain that to some people. Even if I'm just talking to them, I'm like, I'm literally getting such a blueprint of information coming through. And yeah, it's having a level of discernment and like actually, knowing what pieces of information to interact with or let go of or take in. And even just in terms of relating with another person feels like that in itself can be somewhat of a challenge. Like, right. Like if there's so much information coming in, how are we even able to communicate and relate to another person? You have to sort of understand who you're working with, right? And the information that
You
you can share.
do. And you need to not tune in all the time. It's too much to tune in all the time. You could control when you're tuning in. I mean, sometimes I just like to hang out and laugh. Now, I'm not tuning into him.
Right.
And he doesn't ooze, he's not an oozer of energy, he's very contained, which I like also.
Right.
That was important for me to have someone who is contained and not just oozing all over with whatever. who didn't know how to contain their energy.
Right. Right.
So each of you who are listening, you have to decide what's important to you. We're expressing what's important to us and some of the pitfalls and the rewards. There are tremendous rewards of loving somebody and being loved. All right. But that doesn't mean you have to live together. I mean, we're living together, which I can't even believe it, but we have separate spaces too within the space, which is so critical for me. But you don't have to live together. You can live in separate houses, separate apartments. And you could live on different parts of the country and join each other, at specific times. Whatever you want to do is fine. But just let yourself love if you choose to go down this path. Because empaths, in the book I write about how empaths are prone to choosing unavailable people, because, deep down, it's safer. As if somebody is unavailable, then you don't have to deal with all of these things that we've been discussing, because you're always just decoding. Why don't they return my call? Why were they so wonderful, yesterday and now I can't even find them? Why this, why that? If you notice that you're trying to decode your beloved or the person you're dating, that's not a good sign. You don't want to talk to your friends about decoding, well, why did he do this and why did she do that? No, that's not a good sign.
Right. uh, Judith, what attracted you to this space? And can you talk to us a little bit about your own journey and experience? Like, what brought you to this world of empathy?
Well, I was a very sensitive little girl. And I grew up with two physician parents. My mother was family practice, and my father was a radiologist, and I have 25 physicians in my family. So I've got lots and lots of scientific people in my family. And I was a sensitive little girl who would see things and hear things and know things. And I would dream. I was a big dreamer. I would dream things that would come true. And I would tell my mother, and she finally said, never mention this again at home. So I grew up believing there was something wrong with me because they were just not happy with it, not happy with having a child who could do this. And so I got very quiet. I was always quiet, but I think I got quieter. And then I got really heavily involved with drugs in my teenage years to run from this part of myself so I could just be normal with my friends and go to parties and hang out and do what I wouldn't probably want to do if, without the substances. Is I'd rather just sit home and look at a tree or something. But I also, got very heavily involved with drugs. And through a series of events, which I write about in Second Sight, my first book, I ended up going over a cliff in a car up into Topanga Canyon. And amazingly, surviving that. And my parents feeling that I was going to kill myself. So they sent me to see a psychiatrist, basically. And this man turned out to be my guide, my person who was able to see me and say, for you to be whole, you've got to integrate your intuition and your empathic abilities into your being. You can't not do that. And so that's part of you becoming whole. And so he was the first person who really saw me with a capital S. And he connected me to Dr. Thelma Moss at UCLA, who was a parapsychologist there at the time at UCLA. And she had a lab where she dealt with intuitives and empaths and all kinds of things. It was just a historic lab. And she took me under her wing and another mentor to help me really encourage me to be myself and use my abilities for the good. And so it was while I was with her, I had a dream or a voice came to me and it told me that I was going to become a psychiatrist to help legitimize this in medicine. And at the time, I wasn't even in school. I had dropped out of college. And so, because of the dream, I didn't think it would come true, but I enrolled in one course at Santa Monica City College, and one course became two, became 14 years of medical training. And I got an amazing medical background. And it was only after I graduated, really, that I began to integrate intuition and empathy. It's a story I tell. That's a short version of the story. But it's a good model for people, for those who are just beginning and want to see how I did it. You can get second sight, and I'll hold your hand. You can come along with me on my journey and see if you relate.
Oh, beautiful.
So that's a short answer. There's a longer answer.
Amazing, amazing. What about your point of view in terms of like people changing during the pandemic? Like, how has your point of view evolved over time, and has the pandemic shifted your thinking about empathy or how people are relating?
Well, what struck me so much about the pandemic was the social isolation. As for empath, it's a mixed bag. Empaths like being alone. And so, in some sense, they might have had an easier time with it than other people who are not used to being alone and with themselves. They're just not. And so it's very, very hard for them, for non-empaths, to be alone or be with family members all the time in the same space. That was very hard. That's also hard for empaths. Um, but there are empaths who at first were going, I love this. I love this. This is my dream life. To just stay home or be with my animals and order in and do my work online and talk to friends on Zoom. This is great. But then after a while, I noticed people and myself, which surprised me, I was starting to, yearn for human contact again. Luckily for me, I had a partner during that time which really buffered the loneliness. But I know people experienced extreme loneliness during that time and not knowing how to deal with it. I mean, such a crazy situation. You want to be with people, but you're afraid of getting some horrible virus if you hug them. No, it's a terrible situation to be in. And everybody had to make their own way. We were kind of forging a path with that. And I think Zoom was an incredible social unifier for empaths and non empaths to at least, stay in touch that way. Because I think we all yearn for human contact. When empaths are in a normal, non pandemic world, they like the alone time. I have a lot of alone time. Um, and if I do too many things in the day, it's too much for me. I don't want to schedule 5 different things I'm supposed to do during a day. That's not fun for me to go from one thing to the next. As I'm a big processor, and empaths tend to need a lot of time to process their experiences. So let's say, I go for a walk with my friend on the beach. I like to think about it. I like to be with her afterwards, in my own mind and my own heart, and kind of review our walk and feel her and enjoy it. I like to do that. I don't like to just go from the walk to a dinner to a movie. I don't like that. That's not pleasing to me. But I like it when I have a lot of space around my events. And so I could be 100% present with my patients. Now I want to be 100% present with my patients and with everything I do, but I don't want to be rushed. And empaths often find that being rushed can put them on sensory overload.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that so much. Just like really nourishing and appreciating the moments that you spend with a person or at an event or whatever you're doing, you're fully there and immersed in it. I have a friend, one of my dearest friends from San Francisco, also said she just wants to do one thing a day, that.
Right. Yes. Yes. One thing a day is a beautiful thing. You really do it.
Yeah.
And it's fun. It's nice as then time slows down, which is good for me. I don't want time to go so fast. The days just flip by for me as I'm writing now. So I go in another space when I write. which is kind of a non-time, non-space. So time just flits by. Flits by. So I like to elongate the moments, and empaths like that. They like to be with people that they feel good around. And so it's important if you're listening, you don't have anyone you feel good around, that's okay. But begin to stay open to the possibility of a friend that your body likes to be around, a friend that isn't blaming you or criticizing you or saying, "Why are you so sensitive?" You don't need that. There's enough of that going around. You
Mm,
need a friend to say, "Wow, that's really a great dream. I love hearing about your dreams."
mm.
That kind of thing where they're grooving with you. They're not criticizing you or making you feel like you've done something wrong, which you haven't.
Right, right, right. Absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting. It's like I sometimes think about like, emotional resiliency too, like really building our own inner capacity to deal with the world. And I say this because I recently moved to a bigger city and I used to live in the Bay Area, which I guess it is a big city, but compared to the city I live in now, it's much smaller. How like what would you say to empaths living in bigger cities? Like do you recommend that they don't live in big cities, or is it like, what's sort of the prescription of daily living that you recommend for them to deal with?
Yeah, well, I have known many empaths who live in New York City, and it's a special challenge. And I live in LA, but I live by the beach, so it's a little different because I can have the wide open expanses of the beach, which is quite a wonderful thing. But if you live in the city, you have to make your sanctuary in your apartment or your home. Just make a really beautiful space, even if it's small, where you can have a sanctuary and sit and meditate and find that alone time. And there's always windows you can look out of to see the sky. Although in New York, you kind of have to crank your head with some of those buildings if you're not up high enough. That's what I miss in New York City, seeing the moon. It's really hard sometimes to see the moon with all those big buildings. But you find your way. You walk in parks, you try and be out in nature. Um, you go to upstate New York if you live in New York City, so you can be in nature. So you need to take care of yourself and reduce the noise too. You need to have air purifiers or white noise machines so you don't hear traffic all the time. Because empaths are overwhelmed by too much noise. And so you need to buffer the noise level outside in your own apartment, in your own space. And if you can, I know the apartments are small in some cities, but if you can, to have a separate room that is yours. If you can. I mean, some people use the closet. They just go in the closet and close the door and sit and meditate, which you can meditate anywhere. You can make any space a sacred space by bringing your heart into it. Just tune in to spirit, tune into your heart and start to come back to you. Now,
Mm,
that's a 3-minute heart meditation that I have in the Empaths Survival Guide. Also, I want to say something about Affirmations for Empaths. It's a new journal that I have out, and it's for empaths to keep them on the right path every day. There are specific affirmations that you can say every day that will program your mind and to be more positive and not obsess on things that are not helpful to you, and be more positive and practice self-care every day. It's very quick. You just read the affirmation one a day and you practice the same affirmation for a week. Such as, I will listen to my body and honor what it tells me. A
mm,
whole week of, I wake up listening to my body and honoring what it tells me. Now just think, if you did that for a week, how much better you would feel. And I love affirmations because they're simple. You can say, "Oh, I don't like this one," but you do it anyways. You try it. Try it. I listen to my body and do what it tells me to do. I follow its guidance. I'm able to make alone time today, which is replenishing for me.
mm,
I am saying no to toxic people in my life, and inviting positive people in. So you can have a whole week of I say no to toxic people, which means you have to practice setting boundaries, which is a very essential skill for empaths. Must learn how to set boundaries, must learn how to speak up. No two ways about it. You can't get around it. And so if you're reluctant, a lot of empaths are shy and they don't want to speak up because they're afraid they're going to get criticized, which they have been all their lives. You see, so you need to practice with a friend saying no. Oftentimes with my patients who are scared of saying no, I'll be the energy vampire and they'll have to say no to me. So we practice it, together. And that often gets them used to just opening their mouth and saying no, which you're winning the battle then once you can speak and say no.
Mm.
But you have to learn how to say no. I say no a lot. I say no a lot. No, I'm sorry, I can't do it. I can only do this under these circumstances. Um, and no, I have to. Otherwise, as an empath, it would be very hard. I would be tired a lot, which I don't want to be.
Yeah. Wow. This has been so great. Judith, what sort of things have surprised you the most on this journey looking back?
Well, I guess the first thing that came to me is how many hundreds of thousands of empaths there are out there. I thought I was alone. No, as a child, I thought I was alone. I didn't think anybody else was like me. And that's just not true if you feel that way. I used to feel like an alien on Earth, like I didn't belong here, like I belonged in another planet with people who I could relate to. But I'm telling you, we're all here, just in hiding.
Hmm.
So, for those of you who feel alone, there are so many empaths. I get email upon email and letters and correspondence from people saying, "Thank you. I'm awakening as an empath. I'm coming into myself finally after all these years, finally." And so, there's a lot of us out there that we can connect with and network with. And so, you are not alone.
Hmm.
And that was surprising to me, given I felt so lonely for so long and alone.
I love that. Yeah, love that so much. And what do you want to tell our listeners about their health, wellness, well being? What's your main takeaway for folks listening?
Listen to your body, listen to your fatigue level. Don't keep pushing over the red line when you feel tired. You must take time, even a couple of minutes. Let's say you're driving around in your car and you're going from appointment to appointment. You have to take 3 minutes in the car to close your eyes, put your hand over your heart, breathe, relax your shoulders, relax your body. Don't tense up because people tend to tense when they're rushed. And come back to yourself and say a little thank you. Thank you for my life. Thank you for this opportunity to have this day and to be alive. I just had a very close friend have she's 92, 93. She had a fall and she had to lie there for 3 hours alone and naked in her backyard. And she wasn't sure whether it was her time to go or what. But she eventually, a friend came over and helped her, and she's fine now. But she said to me, you know, the greatest gift is just being alive. It doesn't matter what happens in life, just being alive. Where she was just happened, so it's fresh in my mind. She said she was up against, is this it for me? I'm lying naked for hours in my backyard alone. Will anyone ever find me? And just grateful to be alive. No, grateful it wasn't her time to go because she's not ready. And so, just that kind of gratitude so you don't get swept up into all the mundane details of life and forget to be grateful for the very, very basic gift that we're all given every day if we're given it. You never know when it's going to be taken away. But those of us, who are going through a lot, even just be grateful for your life that you're alive. No, she is so, my friend is so profound that she just keeps saying that to me. And she's so happy. She has said I had a transcendental awakening lying there naked. She's a Buddhist and she's had a lot of spiritual practice. Um, I just got awakened to, it doesn't matter what happens in life. It just matters that we're alive. And that she's clinging to life. She wants to live, a long time. And it's just powerful if we could all remember that and keep our priorities straight, that we don't have to have some kind of event happen like she had to wake us up, to the reality of life and the gratitude that we can have for even the challenges.
Hmm. Wow, beautiful. Thank you for sharing that story. I think it's such a powerful reminder just of how precious each moment is and that we're not going to be here forever, right? And really remembering that. So, Judith, where can people find you? Are there any resources that you can point folks to learn more about your books, your work, how to engage with some of the programs that you might have?
Oh, yes. You can go to my website, Judith Orloff, ORLOFF.com. And you can find the Empath Survival Guide, which is the foundational book for all empaths. And also my new journal, Affirmations for Empaths. Um, you can see all the links and where to get it. And I have some online courses for beginning empaths, the Empath Survival Guide course. And then for those who have taken that course and are a little bit further along and in being used to being an empath, I have intuitive healing courses for empaths and sensitives that you could sign up for. So, and there's a bunch of free videos and articles and everything an empath support section, anything you need to know to be an empath, a healthy empath. I've included everything I could think of that has helped me and my patients. And also I want to say I do a few private sessions a week on Zoom if anyone is interested in going deeper.
Wonderful. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time, Judith. This was so, so lovely. And I learned a lot. I'm sure folks listening learned a lot as well. So thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
So, for our audience, thanks for joining and for listening. In this episode, we learned about the Empath Survival Guide for Sensitive People with Dr. Judith Orloff. And you can tune in to Gateways to Awakening, where we host one-on-one conversations with leading experts in wellness, well-being, and spirituality. Thanks again.